So I've never played any kind of horror game before, and I honestly hate any kind of horror, but I thought I would try something new, and little by little I'm going to review each game in the Resident Evil series, and for today's video we start with Resident Evil 1. If you haven't heard of this game before, Resident Evil is a survival horror game developed by Capcom and was initially released in 1996, and was then remastered in 2002. Now Resident Evil's story is about an elite task force called STARS as they investigate the outskirts of Raccoon City after the disappearance of their team members. I definitely feel like Resident Evil does not heavily rely on the story, and I know that was 100% by design. I think that actually benefits the game more because it brings more replayability to it, because you're never coming back to play the story, it's actually more about everything else included in the game. Let's start with the main mechanic of the game, which is the survival aspect. I really dig the survival, especially with how limited everything is, like having to make sure I'm not wasting ammo on enemies, or to make sure I have enough health packs because I'll never know when the next one is coming from. Another fun thing is how the save system works as well. I don't think I've ever played a game like this before where I have to not only keep track of where I'm saving, but also at the same time try to think if this is even a good time to save, because I'll never know when I'm going to get my next chance to save my game. I think it was a great choice to not only have the survival work like that, but also the save system, because it really does challenge you to think about every action you are taking, because one wrong move can get you killed, and every time that happened to me I was like and every time that I did find a save room, it had me feeling like
hot diggity dog. This place is magnificent.
I think the combat and the survival also complement each other really well, only because when seeing a new enemy, if you don't need to kill them, the best option is to just maneuver around them, and that can help save what's in your inventory as well. Now there are times when you are going to have to fight your way through, and that's when the survival aspect starts to shine, especially how it makes finding new weapons really rewarding, like finding the shotgun.
See this? This is my boomstick!
Now let's talk about the enemies really quick. I think like over 90% of the enemies are
creepy as shit.
And I think Capcom did a great job, because I really don't like being around any of the enemies in the game. I think that's exactly how a horror game should be. I do, however, have a few complaints, like how the camera system works, because the amount of cuts there are just to walk around this map are completely ridiculous and make me feel like I'm drunk. Another thing I wasn't the biggest fan of was how much backtracking there was throughout the entire game. Now the map is really interesting and intricate, but the amount of times I would have to walk around the entire map started to hinder my enjoyment, and even sometimes make me lose exactly where I'm going to.
Stop acting like you know the way ahead, like you know the rules. There are no rules, man. We're lost.
Now one last thing I want to give credit to is how great the puzzles were all throughout the game. This game had probably some of the most interesting puzzles I've had to complete, and I did like that everything felt like it had a purpose and it wasn't in the game just to be there. Now even though this game has been remastered, the version that I played still holds up to today's standards, and the only thing I can really complain about the graphics is that the character models look a little outdated. But then again, they never really look that bad, and if you wanted to, the game gives you the option to pick which character model you want to use anyway. Another little thing to add is I did really enjoy how eerie the soundtrack was. I think it played up the effect that I never really felt safe anywhere throughout the map. Resident Evil 1 was definitely a game out of my comfort zone, but I really did have a great time playing it. Now I don't really think I can classify this game as a horror game. It definitely feels more like a thriller game, but I don't really see that as a bad thing. The story was a little predictable, but I think what really sells this game was the puzzles and the survival aspect of the game. Having to keep players always on their toes about what they had in their inventory and what they needed to solve puzzles was a great addition, and definitely created a great sense of accomplishment. So if you haven't played Resident Evil 1 before, I highly recommend it, especially when this game has been out for a while and can definitely hold up to today's standards.